This is Conspiracy Corner, where I either give you a new conspiracy that I have in the sports world. Okay, we're not talking, did Bush do 9/11? Not talking about that stuff within the sports world, or I respond to a new one that I see on the internet. And I have a Caitlin Clark conspiracy theory. I find the way that Caitlin Clark has been portrayed in the WNBA so far intriguing. I don't think it's fully accurate. I don't think that you would find it uncommon to come across parents that think of Caitlin Clark as a good role model for their kids. Okay, when she's at the podium answering tough questions, she answers them with grace. She always just says the right thing. It's really impressive. And I think that parents hear that and want their kids to act in a similar fashion. I think that people see that and they label Caitlin Clark as a nice person. Okay, that feeds into her image, these press conferences and how she maneuvers them with grace. Right? And I believe that in large part reflects the way that she was raised. Okay, her parents are at every game. Okay, we've seen the clips of her dad yelling at her during games. Like, it's clear that her parents have raised her well, and that shows in the moments we see of her off the court. Then there's the on the court stuff. And that's where things get a little interesting. I believe that the WNBA is going out of their way to ensure that people, fans in particular, like Caitlin Clark. Because everyone wants to root for the good guy. So the WNBA is making sure, doing everything that they can to be sure that Caitlin Clark is labeled as the good guy. Okay, and this belief, this idea that the WNBA is going out of their way to do this, comes from something that I have not seen in these WNBA broadcasts that I oftentimes saw when Caitlin Clark was playing basketball at Iowa. When Caitlin was a Hawkeye, she was intense. She was fiery. Okay, she had a motor mouth that could power skyscrapers in New York City. Okay, she talked a ton of trash, like rivaled Larry Bird with the amount of trash that she talked. Okay, and she complained to the officials constantly. Okay, it reminded me at least, of Luka Doncic constantly nagging at the officials. And anytime she hit a big shot, the cameras would cut to her celebrating. Anytime there was a foul called against her, or anytime there was a moment where she thought she got fouled and the referees didn't call it, you would see her complain. Okay, and these broadcasts of her in the WNBA so far haven't shown that a ton. There have definitely been moments where we've seen it, but it hasn't been as overwhelming, as glaringly in your face as it was when she was at Iowa. Okay, like there are a couple of moments that really stick out. They showed her celebrating, pumping up the crowd in Minnesota when they beat the Lynx. There was some tension in that game. Minnesota Lynx head coach had some choice words about Caitlin Clark. Minnesota Lynx head coach is also the head coach of the Olympic team, and Caitlin Clark was not selected. That's one of the two moments that I can vividly remember them cutting to her celebrating or complaining or talking trash. Last night, there was a second moment. Okay, it becomes apparent that the Fever are going to lose on the road against a bad Dallas Wings team, and we see a video of her grabbing a water bottle and spiking it, right? Like, those are really the only two moments where we've seen some real raw emotion from Caitlin Clark. Okay, and I just find it peculiar that with as much as I remember watching Caitlin Clark trash talk and complain and do these things, I just find it peculiar that the WNBA and these broadcasts aren't showing that. And I believe that there are three potential explanations for this. The first option is that she's just stopped talking trash, complaining, and celebrating. And I laugh slightly in saying that because that's just absurd. I don't believe that one's true at all. Okay, now while I do think that people can change, while I do think that the idea that a leopard can't change its spots isn't true, If that was the case and people were incapable of change, then AA meetings would be pointless. Okay, so I do believe that people can change and alter their behavior over time. I just think that it takes people time to do so. Caitlin Clark was highly animated during her final year at Iowa, and I highly doubt that she was able to make such a drastic change in such a short amount of time. So that option off the table. Option number two, which is quite possible, is just that we've become numb to it. Okay. Like I've seen Caitlin Clark celebrate, trash talk and complain so many times that I just don't realize it anymore. It's kind of like when you go nose blind in your house. Okay. That specific smell that you used to get when you walk through the door, when you buy a new home, you don't get it anymore. You become nose blind to it. Right. And then other people show up at your house and you're like, geez, I really hope it smells good in here. But you don't know. You go nose blind to it. You go numb to it. And I think that is a potential reasoning as to why I don't notice the stuff anymore. It is, right? Because she celebrated, talked trash, and complained a lot at Iowa. So it's very possible that I just got used to it. Okay, like this happened to me before. Okay, I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan in my heart of hearts, and so I watch a lot of Dallas Mavericks basketball, and I got so accustomed to watching Luka Doncic complain at the level that he does, that I just kind of stopped noticing it. And then all of a sudden, the Dallas Mavericks are in the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Finals, and I'm getting on Twitter. People are like, "Oh my gosh, Luka Doncic complains all the time," and I'm just kind of like, "Yeah." You kind of get used to it, and you don't notice it anymore, right? And so when that happened, I was reminded, right, and that Luka complains so much, and I think it's very possible that I've gone through a similar numbing phase with Caitlin Clark's trash talk, complaining and celebrating. The third and final option, the conspiracy theory part, the conspiracy theory option. The third and final option, our conspiracy theory option, is that nothing has changed and that the WNBA and ESPN and whoever's broadcasting these games are choosing not to show it. They are going out of their way to portray Caitlin Clark in a very positive manner because they know that the more people that like Caitlin Clark, the more people that will watch. Okay. It makes sense from a marketing perspective that they would want to paint her in a positive light. And if that's what they're trying to do through the way that they're broadcasting these games, it's working brilliantly. Okay. Caitlin Clark is viewed as this positive role model, even though she complains at the same level as Luka Doncic, even though she talks trash at the same frequency as Gary Payton, even though she celebrates like Deion Sanders high stepping into the end zone. Okay, like I don't know about you, but my parents would not have condoned me complaining to referees and umpires that way or celebrating in that manner or talking trash. I'll never forget. It was the summer after my sophomore year of high school. I'm playing baseball, American Legion stuff, and I'm having a day at the plate. I mean, just an absolute day. I'm like 3 for 3. I've hit like 2 doubles and like a screaming line drive that was a single, like just tearing it up at the plate. And I'm feeling myself, feeling really good. And, so I'm playing shortstop and the pitcher on the opposing team winds up on second base. And, I had to let him know that I was 3 for 3 with 2 doubles. I had to. I didn't say anything too crazy. I was just like, hey, man, like, you just can't really get me out today. All that kind of stuff. Then he starts talking back, and then I start talking back, and a little back and forth. The opposing team's coach calls time, sends out a courtesy runner, and that was kind of that. And from that point on, I remember walking back into the dugout, my coach being like, "Jonathan, don't do that." And then after the game, My dad being like, Jonathan, don't, don't do that. That's not a good image. Like, we don't want you to behave that way. Right. But that's how Caitlin Clark behaves. And she's kind of viewed as this positive role model. And it's an interesting thing to me because we all know that she complains. We all know that she talks trash. And we all know that she celebrates. But when Luka Doncic complains, we're like, we don't like Luka because of that. Or when, Patrick Beverly, celebrates or talks trash, we're like, we don't really like that. Right? Like, what makes Caitlin Clark different from those guys? What makes her different from former great players that we didn't like, who talked trash, complained, and celebrated? Is it really like, are the press conferences so overwhelmingly impressive that it washes everything away? Like, I don't think that they are. Like, I think she handles herself well, but I don't think she handles herself that well. Is it because all these other WNBA players are so incredibly petty that she pales in comparison, and so she appears to be just so much better than her peers that we view her in a better light? Is that what's happening? Now, I'm not really sure what it is, but what I do know is that we make exceptions for great athletes. We make exceptions for generational players, right? And the reason why we make exceptions is just simply because they're great. For example, Michael Jordan. We made exceptions for him. Michael Jordan talked a lot of trash. Michael Jordan complained to the officials. Michael Jordan celebrated when he hit big-time shots, right? Michael Jordan was a jerk to his teammates, and we didn't care. He didn't talk to his teammates, and when he did, it was oftentimes, him lashing out at them because they didn't give him the ball, or, they didn't play defense the right way, or they didn't do this, right? It was either him lashing out in that fashion, or it was him making fun of them in a derogatory way. He wasn't nice, but he was on the cover of Wheaties boxes, and he had his own shoe brand with Nike, and he was, an endorser for McDonald's. Like, all these very positive, well-rounded brands were who he represented. And part of that was his image. We had the whole be like Mike thing, right? Like, everyone should want to be like Mike because he's so talented, and he's such a great guy, even though he wasn't a great guy. And I think Caitlin Clark falls into a similar category of, she is so overwhelmingly awesome at basketball that we ignore everything else about her. We ignore the trash talk and the celebrating and the annoying complaining. And, hey, when you're great, you're great. And she really is. She showed why she is so incredible last night, breaking not one, but 2 WNBA records. I'm going to talk about those when we come back here in about 4 minutes.